Ford Focus has evolved, this improved Mark III version offering slicker looks, higher interior quality and extra technology. There's also greater efficiency beneath the bonnet thanks to the addition of a high-tech range of 1.5 litre petrol and diesel engines. The best part though is that this car still remains as rewarding to drive as it's always been. The Focus might have grown up, but it certainly hasn't lost its spark. The problem with success is that it creates an expectation. Whether it's an author looking to repeat the storming sales of a best-selling debut novel, or a rock group recording that tricky second album, prolonging success is just as hard as winning it in the first place. Just ask Ford. This improved third-generation Focus model could serve as a case study in clinging on to hard-won gains. To understand its significance, we'll need to press the rewind button for a moment and shuttle back to 1997. Ford's family hatch contender during this period was the fifth-generation Escort, a car so all-encompassingly woeful that the brand was almost embarrassed to sell it. When the time came for a replacement, we all expected something better. What we got in the Focus model first launched in 1998 was something much, much more than that. A car that, at a stroke, offered arguably the biggest step forward in family car design the market has ever seen. Here at last was technology directed firmly at the man in the street, who, in this apparently humble family hatchback, could experience a car more entertaining and rewarding to drive than almost anything this side of a sizable lottery win. It was asking a lot for the Mark II model we saw in 2005 to repeat such a seismic step forward. But that second-generation Focus was still quite good enough to remain acclaimed as the driver's choice against rival Astras and Golfs that made up for their dynamic failings, with a better ride and a more luxurious big car feel. These were attributes the Focus needed too, and when it came to developing this Mark III version, first launched early in 2011, Ford tried to provide them without compromising the car's class-leading handling. Here was a design with plenty to live up to, the brand's first truly global model, offered for sale in over 120 countries, and aiming to offer family hatchback buyers the last word in comfort, convenience, eco-friendliness and high-tech compatibility with the modern world. Lofty ideals that looked credibly realised back in 2011. By 2014, though, the market landscape in the closely fought family hatchback sector looked somewhat different, the intervening years having seen the launch of impressive new competitors like new generation versions of Peugeot's 308, Seat's Leon, and most significantly, the Volkswagen Golf. In comparison, the Focus was starting to age a little. Hence the need for the far-reaching package of late 2014 updates that has brought us the much improved third-generation version of this Ford that we're going to look at here. It's cheaper to run, safer to drive and smarter both to look at and to sit in. It does, in short, promise the kind of significant step forward that'll be absolutely necessary if Ford is to retain its sales leadership in this segment. Time to put this car to the test. So, what's it like? More responsive than any other family hatchback you'll have driven, is the answer. As with Ford's larger Mondeo, this is one of those cars you get into and drive that feels just right, even in the first 100 yards. The driving position, the feedback through the wheel from the surprisingly responsive retuned electric power steering, and in particular the way the car responds as you throw it into a corner. All these things continue to represent a benchmark in the family hatchback segment. You can also revel in it all with a bit more peace of mind than you'd normally expect from this class of car. Other rivals wait until you're in trouble before their stability control systems cut in. On this updated Focus, a clever enhanced transitional stability setup has been added that'll take action before that point, calculating when a skid is likely and using the ESP system to take corrective measures before you've even realised that they're necessary. There's every reason then to feel that you can really enjoy yourself at the wheel of this car. And if you take up Ford's invitation here, then nothing else in this segment will feel quite the same. Get out of one of these, then go and drive a rival Astra or a Golf. I guarantee it'll feel dull by comparison. But then that's always been true. Where both of those cars used to make up ground on this Ford was in terms of ride and refinement, which are, after all, qualities you can enjoy every day, rather than on the odd occasion when you're in the mood to throw the car around. It's here, though, that some of the biggest improvements have been made. On this updated model, the chassis has been strengthened to make the car stiffer and aid refinement. The dampers get more advanced valves that bring a slightly softer ride, and there are tweaks to the suspension to reduce unwanted wheel movement under load. In response to customer demand, the steering's a little lighter too, though, as I've already suggested, remains as feelsome as ever, a perfect complement to the clever torque vectoring system that lightly brakes the inside front wheel through tight bends, sharpening turn-in and ensuring that all the power gets onto the tarmac. The result of all this is a far classier flow to the way this car drives, something you'll especially appreciate in the more relaxed long-distance motorway composure this model can now deliver. To put it another way, it's more Golf-like. In other words, you no longer have to be a driving enthusiast to really appreciate what this Ford can do. Where some effort will be needed, though, is in the homework that's absolutely required when choosing what will lie beneath the bonnet of the Focus that you have in mind. The lineup of power plants and derivatives on offer is, after all, vast and complex, and was particularly so at the launch of this improved third-generation version, thanks to Ford's decision to offer both new and old generation engines alongside each other. To be fair, when it comes to petrol power, there's some logic to this approach. The old 1.6-litre TI VCT unit the brand has used for many years may be relatively uneconomic, but in 85 PS form it does allow the range to offer a cheap lead-in model, if a rather slow one, with 62 miles an hour from rest nearly 15 seconds away, en route to just 106 miles an hour. It's harder to make a case for the 105 PS manual and 125 PS PowerShift automatic versions of this same 1.6-litre power plant, for these retail at prices that are much closer to the money you'll pay for the more modern engines you'll really want in this car, engines like the one I'm using here. I'm trying Ford's clever 3-cylinder 1-litre T EcoBoost petrol unit, today in 100 PS guise, this the most popular choice across the range for private Focus buyers. You can see why, this combination offering the promise of sprightly performance and diesel economy. It's a combination that's made this tiny little motor quite a hit across so many of the smaller cars in Ford's model lineup. 1-litre T EcoBoost Focus motoring certainly comes with a distinctive soundtrack, complete with the kind of offbeat thrum that tends to characterise 3-cylinder power. If the engineers had added a balancer shaft, as Peugeot did with their rival 3-cylinder 308 eTHP 110 model, for example, then refinement would have been improved. Still, a dual-mass flywheel helps to quell the worst cabin vibrations, and anyway, the sound isn't unpleasant. In fact, it makes the car feel sportier than it actually is. In reality, 62 miles an hour from rest occupies 12.5 seconds en route to 115 miles an hour, and that's only if you're quick with this slick 6-speed manual gearbox. Still, you can improve these figures to 11.0 seconds and 120 miles an hour if you go for the pokier 125 PS version of this unit. Either way, once you're on a proper give-and-take road, this car really shines. Get the engine singing, and it's hard to believe you're working with just 999cc beneath the bonnet. If you do want more from a petrol-powered Focus, then you'll almost certainly be looking at a sporty version, and that'll mean the kind of much stiffer suspension setup that not everyone will like. The 1.5-litre EcoBoost petrol engine Ford has introduced with this updated Mark III model Focus can be found in the mainstream range in top-spec trim with 182 PS, but its primary role is providing a revvy 150 PS output in the underrated Zetec S Junior hot hatch model. Here you've a car capable of averaging over 50 miles to the gallon, yet delivering 62 miles an hour from rest in 8.9 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour. Quite a combination of virtues. Beyond that lie the really serious shopping rocket derivatives, primarily the Focus ST, which now offers a choice of 2-litre power plants. The 250 PS EcoBoost petrol unit is carried over from the previous version, propelling this variant to 62 miles an hour in 6.5 seconds on the way to 154 miles an hour. Quite good enough to give a Golf GTI more than a run for its money. You'll need to talk to your Ford dealer about the ultimate Focus RS model if you want to go faster. Alternatively, ST Folk now also have the option of the brand's much improved 2-litre TDCi diesel power plant, offered in ST guise in 185 PS form and delivering a lusty 400 Nm of torque, around 15% more than the petrol alternative. On the subject of diesel, I'll mention that the same 2-litre TDCi unit can be found in 150 PS form in the mainstream Focus lineup, where it'll take you to 62 miles an hour in 8.8 seconds en route to 130 miles an hour. Most, though, who seek to fuel this car from the black pump will be happy with something a little humbler than that. And here again, at the launch of this improved Mark III model, there was a choice between old and new technology. The old 95 and 115 PS 1.6-litre TDCi engines sold alongside cleaner, more frugal 95 and 120 PS 1.5-litre TDCi units. Make sure you choose the newer tech 1.5-litre diesel option is my advice. There is, after all, no really significant price premium for doing so. The lower powered versions get to 62 miles an hour in about 12 seconds en route to 112 miles an hour, while if you go for a pokier 1.5 or 1.6-litre TDCi variant, you'll improve the sprint time to around 10.5 seconds and top out at 120 miles an hour. That only leaves, by far the rarest, but arguably the most interesting model in the Focus lineup, the intriguing all-electric version. It's significantly more expensive than direct market rivals like Volkswagen's e-Golf and Nissan's Leaf, but it's also significantly more powerful, a combination of a 107 kilowatt electric motor and a 23 kWh lithium-ion battery, together delivering a useful 142 PS and 250 Nm of torque. That pulling power's needed for the hefty 1,700 kilogram curb weight makes this variant over 400 kilograms heavier than a conventional diesel Focus, which inevitably blunts the performance a little, most notably limiting the top speed to just 84 miles an hour. The acceleration's satisfactorily rapid though, 62 miles an hour from rest occupying a quite acceptable 11 seconds. In truth, the Focus Electric is really only aimed at fleet folk. People who'll need to be happy with its restricted 100-mile driving range and prepared to invest in the optional 240-volt charging station Ford offers to charge the thing. Still, it'd be a good car to have if you were primarily urban-based. It's automatic for a start, auto transmission, something that Ford is trying to offer more widely across the more recent additions to the Focus range, with optional wheel-mounted paddle shifters for would-be Alonsos. Buyers can specify an auto box on the 2-litre TDCi 150 PS variant, and a self-shifter's also been developed for 1-litre and 1.5-litre EcoBoost petrol derivatives. Personally, I'd stay with a manual model. Swapping cogs yourself is no real hardship in this car, even in town, where great all-round visibility and a tight turning circle that needs just 2.6 turns lock to lock are both welcome. If you want to make your life even easier, tick the box for the clever Park Assist system, a setup now able to steer you into perpendicular spaces as well as parallel ones. It's yet another thing that makes you warm to this car. It's only when you put this improved focus next to the original third generation version that you realise just how much more expensive this model looks. Ford's objective was to take this car closer to its arch-rival Volkswagen's Golf in terms of visual sophistication and make switching into a Focus a little easier for those afflicted with any degree of badge snobbery. The most obvious change is the addition of this Aston Martin-style trapezoidal front grille, there to give the front end a more distinctive look, also emphasised by subtle chrome detailing and these slimmer, smarter front headlights and restyled fog lamps. It's all part of a design approach that aims to build upon the lower, wider stance delivered by this more dynamically sculpted bonnet. Moving around to the sides, loyal Focus folk will also take in the sleeker flanks and redesigned alloy wheels. But then such detail changes are of course relatively easy to make. What Ford's designers really wanted to do with this updated model was to correct its predecessor's biggest issue, a general lack of boot space. Since this car had to retain the same dimensions and basic silhouette of its predecessor, they couldn't do that. Instead, the brand has had to content itself with a mere styling nip and tuck at the rear that's given us a revised tailgate arrangement and these thinner tail lamps. As a result, Ford dealerships will continue to direct potential Focus buyers prioritising boot space to the estate version, the only other body style alternative the range offers to this conventional 5-door hatch. Lift the wide opening tailgate on this hatch model and up to the level of the cargo shelf there's 316 litres on offer, and you only get that if, rather unwisely, you choose to do without this optional spare wheel. With that fitted, the capacity falls to just 277 litres, which is getting into Fiesta-style Super Mini territory. In the all-electric model, that figure falls to just 237 litres. Overall, with this car, the bottom line is that a Golf would give you 20% more room, and something comparable like a Peugeot 308 would give you nearly twice as much space. Will that be an issue for potential Focus customers? Well, it didn't seem to be with the original version of this car. Plus, of course, you can push the 60-40 split folding rear bench forward, though you do have to flip the seat bases up first, which is a bit fiddly. Once that process is completed, you get a completely flat load area, and as much as 1,262 litres can be freed up, provided you don't need that spare wheel, or 1,176 litres if you do. Should more room than that be required, there is, as I said, always the sleek estate version to consider. Though this rides on the same wheelbase, its extra 200mm of rear overhang allows cargo capacity without a full-size spare to rise to a very decent 476 litres. Rear seat space is closer to the class standard. Wide opening doors help to access it and can be fitted with these neat edge protectors that pop out to prevent car park dings. Inside, fears that the curved rear roofline will severely compromise headroom turn out to be groundless, though the wedgy side profile does hem you in with a slightly higher window line. You sit highishly positioned for a good view of the road ahead, and both head and legroom are adequate even for a couple of 6-footers. As usual with cars in this class, 3 adults will be rather squashed here, but a trio of kids should find the space provided quite sufficient. Time to move up front. With the original first-generation version of this car, Ford made great play about having created a design that could be comfortably driven by anyone between 4'9" and 6'9", and ever since, the Focus has remained a great choice for any size or shape of potential owner. True to form, this version feels right from the moment you take a seat, thanks to near-perfect driver positioning that sees you ideally placed to view the way ahead from a lowish road-focused stance. As before, you're sat in front of a 3-spoke, leather-trimmed, multifunction steering wheel through which you view a pair of deeply recessed, blue-lit instrument dials that look good and are easy on the eyes at night. What's different is that between these has been inserted a bigger, clearer and smarter trip computer display that's far better at covering off key information at a glance. A more significant change, though, with this updated model lies in Ford's efforts to combat the dreaded scourge of button clutter. In the original Mark III version of this car, you could have steering wheel controls dealing with no fewer than 23 functions, enough to give even the most determined technophobe handbook fatigue. This time round, though there are still quite a few switches spread around the dash, they're larger, classier and easier to get to grips with. The addition of extra infotainment screen technology has certainly played its part in helping the designers simplify the control layout, with plusher trim levels getting this smart 8-inch colour touchscreen, the portal for controlling Sync 2, the latest version of Ford's award-winning Sync infotainment system. Through Sync 2, you can control audio, navigation, phone functions and various downloadable apps via voice or touchscreen buttons. I'd master the voice functionality if I were you, as the buttons can be rather fiddly and slow to use. Once you're au fait with this, you can issue simple one-shot commands like play song, to play a track from a CD, or even I'm hungry, to bring up a list of local restaurants on the split-screen satellite navigation system. Sync 2 is optional on lower trim levels, and it's well worth specifying, as without it you're provided only with a much smaller 4.2-inch display, operable only with more conventional button-orientated functionality. Whatever your choice of Focus variant, you'll find trim quality much improved, in a move Ford has had to make to keep up with the segment-leadingly classy Golf. There's still more that Ford could do here, but the addition of soft-touch plastics, black satin trim, chrome detailing and higher quality climate control switches do wonders for the cabin ambience. This is a practical place to be too. The redesigned centre console offers more space, as well as a sliding integrated armrest. Plus, there's a drink holding area that can take a 1.5 litre bottle and a 0.4 litre cup or bottle simultaneously. It's actually quite hard to know where to start when trying to explain the Focus model range to an unfamiliar buyer. It is, after all, so vast. Still, I'll do my best. The simplest aspect is the availability of just two body styles, this 5-door hatch, or for a model-for-model premium of around £1,100, a smartly styled estate option. Most of the mainstream petrol variants offer the option of automatic transmission too. It's the under-the-bonnet issues, though, that require Focus buyers to really know the ropes when it comes to the selection process. Let me explain why. Ford's approach with new generation engine technology is to gradually introduce it, keeping older tech power plants in the range as price-leading models, there to generate showroom footfall. So, even though this improved third-generation model was launched to showcase the freshly developed 1.5 litre petrol and diesel engines that have slotted into the range above the sophisticated 1 litre EcoBoost petrol unit I'm trying here, the old-tech 1.6 litre petrol and diesel units from the previous lineup were still very much a part of this updated Focus range at its launch in late 2014. That approach allows customers to get themselves into this car at list pricing, which can begin from as low as around £14,000, provided they can be satisfied with a hatch body style and the feeblest 85 PS version of the old 1.6 Ti VCT petrol engine. You get a choice of hatch or estate if you opt for this unit in pokier 105 PS guise, but by that point you'd be up towards the £17,000 list pricing point that really represents the proper starting point of the range. All the main modern era Focus engine choices sit in the £17,000 to £21,000 bracket, where most family hatchback segment sales are made. To be honest, buying this car with anything less is a bit like buying an ultra-high def LED TV and then using it to watch VHS videos on. As I said, I've gone here for the 3-cylinder 1-litre T EcoBoost 100 PS petrol version that lists at just over £17,000, the variant preferred by the majority of private buyers. A few of these people might be tempted to find the £1,500 premium necessary to get this unit in pokier 125 PS guise, but that's as far as most petrol-orientated mainstream Focus buyers will want to go. Which means that the impressive, freshly developed 1.5-litre EcoBoost petrol power plant will go largely ignored. It pops up in potent 182 PS guise in top-spec trim, but its main role is in providing a revvy 150 PS output in the underrated Zetec S Junior hot hatch model. That's the car you'd buy if you couldn't quite stretch into the £22,000 to £27,000 bracket required for Ford's proper Focus hot hatch, the ST, which this time round offers something old and something new. The familiar bit is covered by the same 250 PS 2-litre EcoBoost petrol engine this variant had before. A fresh option, though, for ST buyers, and one that comes with no price premium, is Ford's much improved 2-litre TDCi diesel power plant, offered for ST folk in 185 PS form. Which brings me on to the diesel side of the Focus engine lineup. Here again, there was a choice between old and new technology at the launch of this improved Mark III model. The old 95 and 115 PS 1.6-litre TDCi engines sold alongside the cleaner, newer 95 and 120 PS 1.5-litre TDCi units. In this case, though, the choice is easier to make, as the 1.5s are only fractionally more expensive than the 1.6s and are much cheaper to run. In other words, if you want a diesel Focus, make sure you know what you're getting. If diesel economy isn't quite enough for you, there is another option for these days. The Blue Oval brand does offer this car in all-electric form. The technology is very pricey, though. Even after a government grant has chipped in £5,000, you'll still need nearly £30,000 to own a Focus electric model once you've allowed for the cost of the optional 240-volt charging station you'll need to charge the thing. On to the value proposition all of that represents. Let's start with this car's two chief family hatchback segment rivals. Traditionally, a Focus has costed a little more than a Vauxhall Astra and a little less than a Volkswagen Golf, and not too much has changed there. Most of Ford's engine technology is now a little ahead of Vauxhall's, so you might be inclined to accept a premium for that. As to whether you'd pay £1,000 to £2,000 more than Ford will ask you for this car to own a directly comparable Volkswagen Golf, well, this Focus has now closed the gap in quality to its German rival. If Focus residual values improve to reflect this, then justifying the extra spend required to own a Golf in this segment could get increasingly harder to do. But what about the two cheaper Volkswagen Group mainstream family hatchbacks that use Golf technology, Seat's Leon and Skoda's Octavia? Well, what about them? Once you pored over the price lists, you'll find that the savings that most like-for-like Leon and Octavia models offer over this Focus are slight, at which point this Ford's superior driving dynamics come into play. The same is true of potential rivals like Honda's Civic and the Mazda 3. The Focus certainly needs its handling trump card, for there are other rivals in this segment that do offer tempting list price savings. Some versions of Peugeot's very complete 308 will cost you less, with the same going for that car's stablemate, Citroen's C4. You could also save a little by choosing one of the Korean options, Kia Ceed or Hyundai's i30, or by selecting a low-volume player in this segment, like Nissan's Pulsar or Toyota's Auris. In all these cases, though, you can't help continually coming back to the fact that a Focus is better to drive and usually cheaper to run. It'll offer you a wider range of model and engine options, and the technology it delivers remains a step ahead of many rivals. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is this Ford that you really want in this segment, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Blue Oval brand has been when it comes to the standard spec. Well, you be the judge. Providing you avoid the single price-leading Studio hatch variant, and buy into the range at style level, where it fully starts with all the proper engine and body style options, you'll get most of the key features you'll probably want. More specifically, that includes the clever Ford Sync infotainment system with its Bluetooth and voice control functions. Through this, you can enjoy a decent quality stereo system with steering wheel controls, a DAB radio, plus aux and USB input, and a 4.2-inch colour screen. More familiar standard inclusions run to things like air conditioning, a trip computer, a Thatcham Category 1 alarm, power windows and mirrors, and a colour TFT instrument cluster display. There are also technology features that some brands charge extra for, things like hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, tyre pressure monitoring, and the torque vectoring control system that gives you sharper corner turning. And the usual neat Ford-specific touches are in evidence, things like the easy fuel system that stops you pumping in the wrong kind of fuel, an eco-mode driver information setup that gives you energy-saving tips, and the Ford My Key system that enables you to program various parameters into a spare ignition key, so that if you loan your car out, say to your son or daughter, you can restrict the speed at which they drive and even the stereo volume they choose. My Key can even disable the car altogether if driver and passengers are not using safety belts. It can also prevent the driver from deactivating safety technologies like stability control. Here I've opted for a Focus variant trimmed in mid-range Z-Tech guise, which is the level most customers choose. These variants are recognisable by their smart 16-inch alloy wheels, their front fog lights, and this chromed finish on the upper door line. Inside, Z-Tech niceties run to sports seats with lumbar adjustment and a useful quick clear heated windscreen. To this tally, your dealer will probably encourage you to add the extra cost Appearance Pack 1, which upgrades the wheels to meteor looking 17-inch alloys and also adds privacy glass and LED daytime running lights. I'd also want the neat, if rather flimsy, door edge protectors that spring out to do exactly what they promise and prevent parking paint chips. Features fitted on plusher models or available from the options list include things like keyless start, cruise control, rear parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, a heated steering wheel and a rear view camera. Perhaps the most significant upgrade you could make, though, would be to opt for the more advanced version of the Sync infotainment system, Sync 2. Now, with this setup, you get a larger 8-inch colour control screen and a satellite navigation package that offers a split-screen display with detailed intersections, spoken street names, 3D highway junctions and landmark views, plus a useful Michelin guide system that'll find and direct you immediately to destinations like garages, restaurants and places of interest. It's the kind of thing you simply wouldn't expect to see on a car of this class, much like the optional adaptive front lighting system, which uses piercing bi-xenon HID headlamps with beams that adjust themselves through 7 settings to suit the road ahead. So you'd get a longer, straighter beam on motorways, but a more widely spread pool of light for urban driving. When cornering at lower speeds, the system will even project a beam towards the side of the road to make cyclists and pedestrians more visible. Urban driving can be further aided by an updated version of the active park assist system that debuted in the original version of this car, automatically steering you into parallel roadside spaces. Now, this setup's now been improved to also steer you out of such spaces. And the package now includes perpendicular parking functionality that can also steer you into spaces that lie at right angles to your approach. Reversing out from one of these will be helped by a cross-traffic alert feature that warns you of approaching traffic. On to safety. As you'd expect in this day and age, all models include ESP stability control, traction control and an ABS braking system with EBA emergency brake assist for panic stops. There are also the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags to justify a 5-star safety rating from Euro NCAP, who found that a Focus was less likely to cause serious injury to pedestrians than either an Astra or a Golf. There's also an enhanced transitional stability system able to calculate when a skid is likely to take place from a combination of the car's speed, the position of the steering wheel and the speed at which the wheel is being turned. If from that data the system decides that a skid is imminent, braking of individual wheels is applied, often before the driver realises anything is amiss, by activating the ESP stability control system. Want to go further? Ford can oblige if you're prepared to dip into the options list. Adaptive cruise control can keep you a set distance to the car ahead on the motorway, and there's a distance indication feature that enables you to set the preferred distance you want to stay behind the car in front. Get closer than this preset distance and a 3-stage dashboard display is there to warn you. Even more useful is an active braking system that scans the road ahead at speeds of between 5 and 112 miles an hour to detect moving objects you might be in danger of hitting. For lower speeds and urban driving, an active city stop system works in the same way, focusing on static potential accident hazards and now functional at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. As with active braking, if the electronics think you're about to hit something, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the car will then automatically brake itself to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Active City Stop is the most important inclusion in Ford's affordably priced optional driver assistance pack. Also included are 4 other key features: auto high beam headlights that dip themselves in the face of oncoming traffic at night, a traffic sign recognition system that reads signs as you pass and displays them on the dash, a lane departure warning setup that stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another car, and a lane keeping aid that stops dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. It's obviously crucial for Ford to get its cost of ownership sums right, hence the changes made to this updated third-generation Focus that see improvements of up to 15% in fuel efficiency and a significant reduction in CO2 emissions across the range. This is down to various fuel-saving technologies. Take the active grille shutter system. At a standstill and at start-off, this keeps the grille vent open to cool the engine. But when you pick up speed, the vent automatically closes, improving aerodynamics and helping to save fuel. Then there's the smart regenerative charging system, which only charges the battery when required and, whenever possible, avoids doing so when you're pressing the accelerator. Plus, as you'd expect, on nearly all models, an auto start-stop system is included that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Advanced diesel technologies include a lean NOx trap for cleaner exhaust emissions that acts as a sponge to better capture the filthy gases. And there are fewer of those this time round too, thanks to the fact that the engines now breathe more easily thanks to a variable nozzle turbocharger. The units also now produce less friction, thanks to a diamond-like coating used on key parts, like the pistons, pins and seals. As a result of these improvements, the Euro 6 compatible 1.5-litre TDCI engines, this improved third-generation range showcases, are about 10% more frugal than the continuing 1.6-litre TDCI units they effectively replace. To be specific, in both 95 and 120 PS guises, a 1.5-litre TDCI Focus will return 74.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 98 grams per kilometre of CO2. All of which means that compared to a 1.6-litre TDCI model, a Focus with this 1.5-litre engine will take you about 7 miles further on every gallon and can reduce emissions by as much as 22 grams per kilometre. Quite a saving. The bigger 2-litre TDCi engine that's traditionally powered pokier diesel Focus models is now also much more efficient too, offering a 15% fuel economy improvement despite an output increase from 140 to 150 PS. That means 70.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 105 grams per kilometre of CO2. Go for this unit in the 185 PS form you'll find used in the ST hot hatch, and those figures fall to 67.3 miles to the gallon and 110 grams per kilometre. If your emphasis is less on getting yourself the ultimate diesel and more on getting the most ultimately efficient Focus, then you might conceivably be interested in the all-electric version. Though the asking price of this variant is high, once you've paid it, the potential savings are considerable. Or at least they are if you're careful about when you plug into the optional 240-volt charging station Ford can supply with the car to rejuvenate the 23 kWh lithium-ion battery that powers the 107 kilowatt electric motor. A range of 100 miles is quoted from a full charge that will take 10 to 11 hours from a standard domestic 240-volt 10-amp socket. Alternatively, if you've access to a fast charger operating at 32 amps, you'll be able to fill up an empty battery on your Focus Electric in as little as 3 to 4 hours. On to petrol power. At launch, budget versions of this improved Mark III model continued on with 85, 105 and 125 PS versions of Ford's old, normally aspirated 1.6-litre TI VCT unit. But these are relatively inefficient by modern standards, partly because they can't be fitted with the auto start-stop system used elsewhere across the range. The best the manual variants can do is 47.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 136 grams per kilometre of CO2. The best way of putting that mediocre showing into perspective is to give you some comparable figures from a more modern Focus engine. Let's say the 100 PS 1-litre T EcoBoost variant I'm driving here. So, how does this do? Quite a lot better is the answer. You can get this unit in an eco-orientated Focus variant that will put out just 99 grams per kilometre of CO2. Find another non-hybrid petrol engine car on sale today that can do that, and you'll be doing well. Here, I'm trying this same engine in a more standard Focus model, where it delivers 105 grams per kilometre and 61.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Still pretty impressive. And if you opt to specify your 1-litre T EcoBoost petrol Focus in uprated 125 PS form, the returns are very little affected, falling only slightly to 60.1 miles to the gallon and 108 grams per kilometre. You can see why Ford estimates that over 75% of all its Focus sales will be of either 1-litre EcoBoost petrol or 1.5-litre TDCi diesel models. But are the quoted returns from this 1-litre petrol unit really achievable in real-world everyday motoring? Now, I raise this issue because some have doubted this point, and it's certainly true that this 1-litre T EcoBoost power plant requires a more efficiency-orientated driving approach if you're to get close to the running cost returns it's supposed to be able to achieve. Fortunately, Ford's technology helps here. There's an illuminated arrow on the instrument panel that tells you when to change gear for maximum fuel efficiency. And you get an eco mode system that continually assesses the effects of your driving behaviour on your fuel consumption. The setup analyses your speed, gear shifting, braking and anticipation levels, plus the number of short and long journeys you make. Smart software then advises you on how to improve fuel economy. That leaves only the pokier petrol models that make up only a fractionally small part of Ford's annual Focus sales mix. Let's start with the underrated 1.5-litre EcoBoost unit introduced as part of the changes made to this third-generation model. It puts out nearly twice as much power as that old 1.6-litre TI VCT petrol engine I mentioned earlier, yet is about 10% cleaner and more frugal. Such is the pace of progress. More specifically, in both 150 and 182 PS guises, a 1.5-litre EcoBoost powered Focus manages 51.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 127 grams per kilometre of CO2. That makes this 130-mile-an-hour junior hot hatch a good alternative if you can't stretch to the running cost returns of the petrol-powered 250 PS 2-litre EcoBoost Focus ST hot hatch. Specifically, this top ST shopping rocket is 6% more frugal than it was before, thanks to the addition of auto start-stop, meaning it can now manage 41.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 159 grams per kilometre of CO2. What else? Residual values. These are expected to improve slightly in line with this enhanced model's improvements in quality and technology. But inevitably, depreciation figures remain no match for the rock-solid returns that you'd get from a Golf. Now, having said that, you'd be paying significantly less for one of these up front. So if you're calculating whole life costs, this Ford can still look a very attractive high-volume model prospect. The key here is to be reasonable in your expectations. Diesel variants will hold on to their value best, but the lower servicing costs of the 1-litre petrol unit will remain attractive for lower mileage drivers. All Focus models come with an unremarkable 3-year 60,000-mile Ford warranty with Ford assistance at the roadside for the first year. If you plan on keeping your car for longer or are a high-mileage driver, you can pay a small extra cost to extend that warranty to either 4 years and 80,000 miles or 5 years and 100,000 miles. There's also the option of a Ford Protect Premium plan that over 2 or 3 years can cut the cost of scheduled servicing. That only leaves insurance groupings, which start at 7E for the entry-level 85 PS 1.6 Ti VCT petrol model, rising to either 11E or 13E for pokier versions of this unit. For a 100 PS 1-litre T petrol EcoBoost Focus, like the one I'm trying here, you're looking at a rating of either 11E or 12E, though this will rise to 14E if you order the 125 PS version of this engine. The few that want the 1.5-litre EcoBoost unit will be looking at a 19E grouping, with it in 150 PS tune, or 22E in the case of the 182 PS version. As for diesels, well, a 95 PS 1.5 or 1.6-litre TDCi Focus is rated at Group 11E. A 115 PS 1.6-litre TDCi Focus is Group 15E. And a 120 PS 1.5-litre TDCi Focus is rated at either Group 15E or 16E. Finally, in the mainstream lineup, a 150 PS 2-litre TDCi variant will be rated at Group 22E. If you're looking at the ST model, base your calculations around a grouping of 34E. This is the world's best-selling global nameplate, with good reason. Has any car had more of an impact on modern-era motoring than the Ford Focus? With over 12 million global sales on the board, it's hard to argue the point. What I like most about it is that despite the drive towards better efficiency, improved safety, greater practicality and beefier build quality, it remains, underneath it all, the rewarding steer it's always been, an entertainer at heart. I know, I should be talking about the efficiency gains, the high-tech safety gear, the clever sync infotainment system, the soft-touch dash and the updated styling. But let's cut to the chase. Other manufacturers can do that stuff. They can't, though, make their family hatchback contenders drive like a Focus. This car's still out ahead in that regard. Not by as much as it once was, but it's still right there as the default pick if you like your driving. But not everyone does. Many family hatchback folk are buying a car of this kind simply because it ticks the right boxes for safety and running costs, and I have a suspicion that it's these people who will have their perceptions most changed by this improved Mark III model. They'll like the responsively frugal new generation 1.5-litre engines. They'll appreciate the higher safety standards, and they'll click with the improved quality. True, this car is still far from perfect. There are cheaper rivals and there are certainly more spacious ones. As an overall package, though, it remains hard to beat. These days, not only a fine thing to drive, but perhaps more importantly, also now a fine thing to ride in, and to own, and to avoid a crash in. In short, if you can afford the asking prices, you'll find that here's a family hatchback that has its priorities right. A car that's grown up, but one that still knows how to enjoy itself. I wonder how many owners will ever discover that. Perhaps it doesn't matter. This car, after all, no longer depends on handling supremacy to justify its position at the top of the sales charts. Smarter and more sensible, it is more than ever number one for a reason.